Welcome to the session on latest legal and ethical issues in the newsroom. We're going to try to have this as really a dialogue here. The plan is to have approximately maybe 20 to 30 minutes of some general comments from the three of us, and then really want to throw it open to the people here in the audience as to some of the issues that may be cropping into their, or creeping, both creeping, cropping, whatever, into their newsrooms that they see as being issues that newspapers better be on the watch for. I'm joined by two of the better known First Amendment lawyers in the New England region and beyond. Justin already introduced both of them, so that I can skip through that. I was going to say they really need no introduction and then usually go on for 10 minutes, and I always love that phrase. I think we're going to start with Greg, who's going to talk about a couple legal issues. Then we'll move on to Peter, who I think is going to focus a little bit on the issues of photography and drones and who can videotape and what happens when police tell you to stop shooting video and everything. But Greg Sullivan's up first.
Thank you. So my name's Greg Sullivan. I'm an attorney with Malloy and Sullivan in Hingham, Mass., but I've been general counsel to the New Hampshire Union Leader and associated companies for the past 39 years. And thank you all for being here, and thank you, Justin, for asking us to speak. I love speaking about the First Amendment and media law. I teach a course at Suffolk University Law School called First Amendment Media Law. I call it also the Five Freedoms. I call it also Where Do You Draw the Line? I was asked to speak about legal and ethical issues, and I deal with legal issues all the time. Ethical issues I've spent very little time in my career thinking about. So to prepare for this, I went to the website of the Society for Professional Journalists, found out they had a code of ethics. I printed it out and put it on your chairs. So now you guys know a lot more about that issue than I do. I contacted two of the editors at the New Hampshire Union Leader saying I got to speak at NEFAC on current legal and ethical issues in the newsroom. So what are they? And they said our main concern lately is that law enforcement seems reticent to speak to the press, also known as the dishonest media. They said this is apparent in the Joy Silva case. Perfunctory press releases where names of victims are shielded, and an almost complete lockdown of information in deaths and officer-involved shootings being investigated by the Attorney General's office. Reaching out to pry information from family members in the community is difficult under normal circumstances. To do it with no official narrative to vet the sometimes secondhand information raises some interesting ethical questions. One place where legal and ethical collide is how we use social media. If someone is arrested for murder, can we use their Facebook photo? Okay, maybe not, but if we know police grabbed this person's Facebook photo and use it for a wanted poster, can we use that? What if the person is dead and their family wants us to use the photo, but they don't know who took it? So those are the topics that were suggested to me by the newsroom in New Hampshire. I always start when I'm speaking about the First Amendment and the press with this document. And can you all in the last row read everything on there? Well, I'm serious. This is the United States Constitution, and there's only 4 words that really matter to me and I think to the profession that you're engaged in. Can you see the 4 words there? No? We the people. Done. That's it. That's all you need to know. We are the government. We own the courthouse. We own the state house. I go into the police station and I say, Chief, I understand you had a murder here last night. I want you to bring out all the documentation you've assembled so far. I want to see the witness statements. And as I'm saying that, they're dragging me out because the chief doesn't understand that he's working for us. So there are interests that, this slide is to depict that there are governmental and societal interests that clash and crash head-on with our free press and free speech rights. Anybody know what they are? What these governmental interests are? Let's have a little interaction here. Anybody think of a governmental interest that might restrict the freedom of the press?
Public safety.
That's the second one. National security, you were all supposed to say right off the bat. Remember that those guys in Washington that don't want us to know what's going on? They call it education, the protection of children, protection of reputation. You know, I like to defame people, but there's a problem. It's not free speech if I have to pay money, because the jury says I have to pay them money just because I injured their reputation. Privacy is a huge right that crashes and clashes head-on with free speech and free press. I wrote a book called Gone with the Wind. I'm having trouble getting it published. Some other lady wrote a similar book, I guess. And time, place, and manner restrictions. You all familiar with the Stingray?
Yep.
I actually showed this for the first time at this conference last year. If you're not familiar with a Stingray, it's a device that law enforcement and anyone can have if you have $500,000 to spend on it. But with a Stingray, the police can access every cell phone in, for example, in Boston. If the FBI in Boston uses their Stingray, they can look at every cell phone in the greater Boston area. They can see your contacts, they can see your calls, they can see your emails, they can see everything on your cell phone with a Stingray. It's a huge new law enforcement device, raising obviously privacy issues. Police body cameras, dash cams, body cameras. We had a pretty good program on this last year about the police body cameras, and obviously it's breaking all over these days. I think they're a wonderful tool, and I wish all law enforcement officials wore them all the time. But this was a statement from a police chief in Pennsylvania where they could only use the cameras in public places, and if they went running into a home in an emergency and didn't shut their camera off, that would be a misdemeanor committed by the police officer. Unfortunately, in New Hampshire, there are efforts, this has passed, excluding, this is an exemption from our right to know law, RSA 91A. Anybody familiar with this quote? Press is overstepping the obvious bounds of propriety and decency. Instantaneous photographs and newspaper enterprise have invaded the sacred precincts of private and domestic life. Numerous mechanical devices threaten to make good the prediction that what is whispered in the closet shall be proclaimed from the housetops. Familiar with that quote? Do you remember when it was? Anybody? What year?
1700s.
No. 1890. And very true today. So there are only 4 kinds of invasion of privacy. I'm going to be quick because Peter's going to cover these topics with a lot more cognizance than I have, because he's been doing this a lot longer than me. I've only been doing it for 39 years.
By 2 years.
4 kinds of invasion of privacy. That's 652B. That's the Restatement of Torts. If you really want to study this, you Google the Restatement of Torts, and it has all kinds. Every state has cases on these issues. Intrusion upon seclusion is the easy one. I have a camera now that has a cable with a lens at the end, a periscoping device. I can get into bathrooms and put it under the stall so I can see what you're doing in the bathroom. Intrusion upon seclusion. I do tell people that in order to have a valid case for invasion of privacy, we have to have a reasonable expectation of privacy. And these days, when you leave your house, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy anymore? And I say yes, in the bathroom stall, in the locker room, and that's about it. That's the easy one, appropriation of name or likeness. I was going to start a root beer company. I was going to call it Bruce Springsteen Root Beer. Can't do that without his permission. This is the one that we deal with in the press on a regular basis. Publicizing private matters that would be offensive to the reasonable person. However, is it of legitimate concern to the public? I always give the example of the newspaper reporter walking down Main Street Saturday night at 11:30 by the mayor's house. The front door is open. There's a storm door that's glass, but the reporter can see in. The mayor is nude, fist fighting with her husband. The other odd thing is that there's empty beer cans filling the living room up above their knees, and that's where they do their fist fighting. So obviously the reporter takes a picture, brings it back to the newsroom. Are we going to run this Sunday morning on the front page? Is it of legitimate concern to the public what the mayor's doing in her living room Saturday night at 11:30? Okay, let's make it the chief of police who's on duty 24/7, 365. Okay, let's make it the principal of the elementary school. Let's go back to the mayor. Are we going to run that picture?
Is it a strong mayor?
Well, it's a woman, so obviously it's a strong mayor. Public disclosure of private and embarrassing facts. Look for facts that are sufficiently private, sufficiently intimate. Disclosure be highly offensive to the reasonable person. The defense is newsworthiness. False light invasion of privacy is an interesting one. I'll be quick. How am I doing? A couple more minutes?
3 minutes.
Oh boy.
Greg, you gonna run that photo? Of the mayor?
You know I am. False light invasion of privacy. You all familiar with Warren Spahn? Warren Spahn? Anybody? No? How about Pedro Martinez? Roger Clemens? Warren Spahn was those guys rolled into one in 1939, 1940. He was the best pitcher in baseball. He joined the Army, went to Belgium and fought in World War II. When he came back, someone wrote a book, said Warren Spahn, what a hero back in the major leagues, still the best pitcher, but in Belgium, he fought on the battlefield. He was shot and wounded, taken away on a stretcher in an ambulance, awarded the Purple Heart. It was a wonderful story. It was a book. Problem is, it wasn't true. He fought on the battlefield, but he wasn't shot. He didn't get a Purple Heart. He didn't get taken away in an ambulance. Warren Spahn sued the author successfully. The difference between false light invasion of privacy and defamation is that the false light invasion of privacy can enhance someone's reputation. Defamation has to injure someone's reputation, but they're both actionable at law. That's something we do in New Hampshire, is be careful how we record. Every state has its own laws. Drones is a whole topic that I think Peter's going to touch on. You all have this picture. I'm out of time. Let's take a look at this picture. The lady goes to the county fair. She comes out of the fun house. She steps on a button, and it makes a noise, and the wind blows her skirt up. It's hard to see, but that's her skirt there. That's her underwear. What happened was the paper had sent a reporter out to the county fair to take some pictures, write a story. This picture showed up on the front page of the county newspaper, a weekly, and she sued for invasion of privacy, public disclosure of private and embarrassing facts. Question is it a legitimate concern to the public? Did she have a reasonable expectation of privacy? You all are the jury. How many people are going to give this lady money because this picture ran in the paper? We have some no's, we have a maybe, we have a yes.
Can you see her face, Greg?
Well, that's what the newspaper said. This is an actual case, and the newspaper said you can't even see who she is. And she said, what are you kidding me? Those are my two boys coming out right behind me, and everybody knows wherever I go, my two boys are right behind me. The paper said, well, you know, there were 35 people who saw you come out and saw this. And she said, yeah, but that's not the 2,000 people that read it in the newspaper. So let's put our hands up. Let's have a show of hands. How many people are going to give this lady money?
What year was this?
I call this a Primadonna case. It was 1954 in Alabama. Madonna's a woman that made wearing your underwear on the outside popular. It's a Primadonna case. She got $18,000 in 1954 in Alabama. I can't believe some of you people would give her money.
Well, what was the resolution of it?
She got $18,000 from a jury in
She won.
1954.
She got it.
I didn't know until a few minutes ago whether she'd get any money today. Now I'm not really sure one way or the other. This is the ethics. You all have the code of ethics in front of you. Issue we're dealing with in New Hampshire now all the time, and some of you may at your newspapers, and I'll shut up in a second. You can get your arrest and your conviction annulled, and the statute says if it's annulled, the person has the right to be treated as if it never happened. So we're getting calls all the time at the newspaper, hey, when people Google me, it comes up that I was arrested, that was annulled, you've got to remove it from your website, you've got to talk to Google, you know, we hang up on them. Thank you very much.
Sorry I went so long. Nothing's changed. Good morning. On my presentation, anytime you have a question, please raise your hand. This is interactive and it's meant to be. You will not be identified. As I mentioned to Justin in the beginning, normally when I speak, I initially say no photographing, no taping, nothing's going to be a free enterprise and a free exchange of ideas. We want that to happen today also, so please let us know. But to start off with a quote, the truth which makes people free is for the most part the truth which people prefer not to hear or not to see. We're in the business of telling the truth. We're in the business of telling the people what occurred and what happened. Now, what my talk today is going to be on photography and what photos can we use. And in today's world, it's changed from 41 years ago. We're talking about technology. Trespass, wiretapping, eavesdropping, helmet cams, body cams, drones, video cameras, HIPAA. All of these affect how we produce news and what photographs we take. Now, one of the things that interferes with what we do are laws. So, I want you to put that aside. We are news people. When you see a photograph that you want to take it. If you're thinking, is this going to be an invasion of privacy? Is this going to be intrusion? Is this going to be defamation? That's not your job. Your job is to take the photograph. Please take it. You have an issue, come back, you see your editor, you see someone, and then they may even call an attorney. But never hesitate to write a story or to take a photograph because you think, I may not be able to take it. If a police officer says you can't take it, you take it. If a court officer says you can't take a photograph of that defendant because there's someone in front of it, take it. You have to remember, the laws are all based upon what I believe to be the main law for us, and that's the First Amendment. Congress shall make no laws. Keep saying that. Congress shall make no laws affecting the freedom of speech, affecting the freedom of the press. We don't live in Cuba. We don't live in Russia. We live in America. And there should be no laws. And when you talk about intrusion of privacy and all what Greg put for laws, especially the new laws, always remember, we are news people. If we tell the truth, as the Poynter Institute has always said, there's nothing to fear if all we print is the truth. And that's what we should do. Now, many of you are photographers. We get caught sometimes, not with the photograph, but with the editorial department with the caption. So, when you take a photograph, please be sure to talk with someone in editorial. In the old days, we used to have photographs come in at 10, 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, and the caption used to be written at 2 in the morning. That doesn't happen anymore. I go in the newspaper business, I go in the newsroom now at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's no one there. I go in at 2 p.m. and there's no one there. So it's changed a bit. Be careful. They're writing that caption at the last minute. That's what's going to kill the photograph. But take the photograph. Now, trespass. Where can you take photographs? Can you take photographs in court? Yes. And you have to be reasonable. I tell all my news people that it's common sense and it's reasonableness. No one can tell you not to take a photograph. No one can tell you not to write a story. When you're in court, and they're blocking the defendant, go up and ask the clerk, I want to take a photograph. Okay? Ask the judge. Don't be afraid. She or he is just one of us. Say, Your Honor, raise your hand. Say, I can't see the photograph. And if they don't, I have these little Miranda cards that I have here, what to say in court and what to say if you get thrown out of an executive session, or if they tell you not to do a photograph. Take that photograph. You have to take the photograph. Now let's talk about some of the things that Greg brought up. Trespassing. So you're walking by and they take a photograph that you can see. What if you're part of a drive-by or drive-in with the fire department? There's arson, and you arrive, and the chief says, come on in. I want to show you what actually happened. Can you walk in there, and can you take photographs of a building, and he's going to show you a canister, and it said, this has been set, this is arson. You walk to another room, and you're going to see someone who's maybe has passed away. Then you walk to another room, and there may be a crying baby. Can you take photographs of all that? Have you taken photographs of all of that? Has anyone in this room gone in with the police department or with the fire department into a crime scene to take photographs? Has anyone? 1, 2, just 2, 3? Well, then the rest of you aren't doing your jobs. Because you please contact the fire department and the Down Police Department and you want to ride along with them. You want to take these photographs. These are very important photographs that you may not be able to see ever again. Take those photographs. Consent. Try to get consent when you take that photograph. What about children's photographs? What about school photographs? Seems to be a big thing now again. Can you take a photograph of a child on the street, in a school, during a school event? Can you publicize that photograph of an 8-year-old crying on the side of the road because something happened? Do we publish those?
Yes.
Yes.
Not the school ones, though.
Not the what?
Not the school ones, though, without a consent form, no?
Well, why not?
Because the school department says you can.
Fine. But when they say you can't walk in. What if you're there? You're in an event. You're in a sporting event. Again, it's the truth that we're trying to publish. We're trying to publish what we see and what we haven't seen. And that ties into what Greg has talked about ethical questions. When there's an ethical decision whether to run, you have an accident, someone's impaled on a hood ornament, and you take that photograph, that's your case on that, and you take that photograph. Would you run that 18-year-old who was impaled on a hood ornament on page 1? Some papers would not run it. You say no, she says yes.
If the paper was 5,000 miles away from where the accident occurred.
Okay, who makes that decision?
The editor.
Yes, it's an editorial decision. It shouldn't be a legal decision. It shouldn't be a court decision. You shouldn't be thinking, should I run or not? It's an editorial and it's an ethical decision. It talks about ethics. Should we run? Should we not run Society of Professional Journalism? And some people would not run that photograph. If you ran it, would you be liable? Would this be an emotional distress case? Intrusion? The answer is no.
Public event.
Yes, but the family's not going to be happy about what happened. But again, it's an editorial decision. Okay, it's not your decision as a photographer. Take the photo. Take the photo, and then have the editorial decision make the decision. Body cams. Get HIPAA. HIPAA's a big issue. We used to have an issue with the Housing Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. If any of you had any problem when you take a photograph and the fire department or the police department says that you can't run that photo because it's a medical issue? Yes. Or someone in an ambulance?
Yes.
Fine. Recently?
Yes.
Okay. They're wrong. And have them call me on that. There's actually a letter that says that there's a difference between the fire department giving you information, okay, and as a first responder, and someone's actually administering medical attention, such as a doctor or a nurse. They can tell you the names. You can take those photographs. Okay, now they may ask you to leave. We can't interfere with the police action. And that's important, especially with, say, Occupy Wall Street. And there were a couple of cases on that where photographers were arrested, interfering with the police action, and the cameras were taken and confiscated. What do you think? You can't do that. The police can't do that. The police cannot do that. Okay? Don't be intimidated by that. Again, we are the press, we're the First Amendment, and we're here to tell the truth. what's happening. One case was lost on that, by the way, just quickly on the Occupy Wall Street, because the photographer happened to be part of the demonstration, happened to be part of the violence. And she was seen taking the photograph, and they had some footage. Again, as Greg said, is the expectation of privacy. They were everywhere, on street corners, on lights. You can't go anywhere and not be photographed. I mean, I walk by with my wife, and I just wave. You know, the local police department. I park my car in Andover on Main Street, and they know exactly where I am at all times. A little scary. Can you get those? Can you go into a police station and ask for those? Can you use those photographs? Ask. It's public record. It's our money. They're using those. Okay. We have some difficulty doing on a murder scene here in Massachusetts, even though it's on the top of a high school. Get those. Questions on photographs. Go on, ask me. This is free advice. You call me later, you're going to get charged. This is free. Any issues on drones? Okay, there's an issue on drones, and there's an issue on similar on public records, where the public record should be on the internet. You know, you can go into a housing court and a probate court and get any record you want. But there's an issue now in Massachusetts and other states on whether those issues can in fact be, on whether those records can in fact be part of a internet. Same with the drone. I had a client in 1975, and he was wondering how in the world racehorses would get out of New Jersey and win a race at 35-1. No one can figure that out. They traced it back to Massachusetts horses, or horses, depending where you come from. Massachusetts. My wife says I don't, my eyes are not there. I say that they're there. So what the reporter did is he hired a plane, and he drove around Essex County. And he drove around Essex County with a plane. We used to do that, by the way. Okay? And he found the racetrack in the middle of the woods, completely disguised. And that racetrack led to the prosecution and the jailing of the people who were training horses in Massachusetts, bringing them down to New Jersey, and 35-1, and they were winning them. What in the world is the difference between an airplane and a drone? 20 years from now, they're going to be scratching their heads, and they're going to be saying, why in the world were they 500 feet above? They can't take a picture of a drone. It has to be. It can't be for commercial purposes. Yes.
So when we set a drone up now and we are live streaming, there's no editorial decision we made. It's live on Facebook. What if we're filming a parade and we go up high enough that we catch a naked couple in their backyard? What's our liability there?
Okay.
That's a good question.
Our ownership group is having just palpitations about this.
Well, number one, who owns the drone?
The newspaper does.
Okay, so the newspaper owns the drone for commercial purposes.
Yes.
Okay. You're not supposed to be using that, and I'm not supposed to be saying that because I'm saying take every photograph you can and do it.
But the FAA made the rule change in August.
For commercial purposes.
Yes.
If you get licensed.
If you have a license.
Did you get licensed?
Yes.
Fine. You've got to get licensed. Imagine you've got to get licensed to have a drone to take a photograph.
Yeah.
Again, laws are our
Yeah,
biggest
but back
issue.
to the question, can we send that drone over someone's, you know, I'm taking a
Yeah.
outdoor shower with my 6-foot-high stockade fence.
Right.
Do I have a reasonable expectation of privacy that a drone or a satellite will not be photographing me? I don't know anymore.
Okay. Let me twist it around. What if you took a photograph of, that just happened to catch a mayor in her backyard, okay, dealing with a known drug dealer, and you see some money being exchanged? Would you run it then?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Why? What the heck is the difference? And she's in a bathing suit. She's in a bathing suit. Wait,
So
the
what?
drug dealer's in a bathing suit. The kids running around the high
I
fences.
think there's news value in the mayor doing something illegal versus a couple having an intimate moment in their backyard.
But wait a minute, I don't know what you mean illegal.
I just said drug
She's dealing with
transaction.
Oh, you said handing the mayor money, I wouldn't assume that it was an illegal transaction.
But if it's a known drug dealer?
Yeah, I said
That what
no.
you
I
said?
just say
Yeah.
known drug dealer.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean the mayor was buying drugs.
Reimbursing them for the beer for the
Might have
party.
bought
you
his
know.
bike, she might have bought a bicycle from that drug dealer.
But the
I'd run the picture, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I'd run it also.
But
Okay,
the
the both of
problem
us
is
would
you're
run
live
it.
streaming, you can't take it back at this point, so where is your liability?
Well, you've got tremendous liability. That's why during a TV program, they have a 5-minute delay in case they say something that you're going to be that you're going to be sued for. That's part of both our ethical and our legal responsibilities. These are uncharted waters, literally uncharted waters that we're doing with, that we're having with drones, we're having with live streaming, that we're having with public records online. These are technological advances that we have today that we didn't have 10 years ago, and the courts are struggling with, and we don't have cases on that. But again, if it's completely new and it's on the backyard, you can't run that.
Yeah, but she's saying it's live streaming.
Yeah.
It
So
is
what-
actually.
So someone has whoa, you know, I mean, you have the ability
Our
to,
photog is probably watching the action in the parade because that's his assignment.
Yeah.
And this couple is, you know, on the periphery.
right, so does that person who's running the drone have the ability to
Yeah.
turn it away or blank the screen?
Yeah.
I think they have to do
If they
that.
notice it, I mean, if you're looking at the action on the parade
Right.
and, you know, over here is a glimpse of a naked couple, you might not even see it.
Yeah,
I would say you don't have any reasonable expectation of privacy if you're naked in your own backyard, full stop.
Did everybody hear that?
Maybe out
Wait a
in the
minute,
middle
stop
of the
that.
woods,
Did-
but
did-
like
wait, stop it.
in
Did everybody hear that?
People are gonna see you.
Okay.
Like,
Did everybody hear that? Did you hear that? Did you agree on that?
No, if you have a walled yard. I think in the pre-drone,
Yeah.
pre-super
Right.
technology days,
Yeah.
you would have an expectation if you
maybe.
were in your backyard. They have a fence around it.
But
You
not
would have
anymore.
Some
What?
expectation of privacy.
So now, you don't have an expectation of privacy because you should know that there could be a drone above your house filming you.
And have you looked at every slat in your fence to know that one's not missing and your neighbor can't see?
In the
you?
old days, they
Of course I
had
do.
telephoto lenses.
That's right.
What if you're on the top of a building and you have a telephoto lens, okay, and you scan the neighborhood and zap, you pick someone up, okay, in the backyard nude? Would you run that?
Well,
Would you run that?
yeah,
No.
probably.
No, I wouldn't.
No, because you use a telephoto
If
lens.
you-
Remember,
if
the
you
law
could
was if
see
you can
it-
see it.
If you could see it from the street.
Yes.
This is the old rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Whatever you could see from the street.
That's right.
And could photograph. Well, once telephoto lenses came in, that
Yeah.
gave you even more technology to photograph things in ways that you might not have been able to do with a.
And the courts used to say, no, you have to see it with your eyes. However, there's a recent case that where a photographer actually used a telephoto lens and photographed someone in the background, and then they ran it, and they ran it multiple times, and they were sued. The photographer won only because he couldn't identify who was there, even the people who knew who they were. But again, the telephoto lens is very similar to what we have now with the drones.
well,
How
just to
is
go
that?
beyond that,
It's not possible. I mean, you know, with a telephoto lens, you're on your own 2 feet.
Yep.
With a drone, you're in airspace.
Mhm.
I mean, I just cannot imagine, is there set a law that says you have no expectation of privacy now?
Jennifer,
Your backyard?
Jennifer
No, not that I've
Aniston,
heard.
Jennifer Aniston, you all know who she is.
It's not at all newsworthy.
Jennifer,
It shouldn't even be a question.
wait a minute, Jennifer Aniston sunbathes topless
Oh, yeah.
in her friend's, this is a real case, in her friend's backyard. Her friend has a 6-foot-high stockade fence around the pool where Jennifer sunbathes. It's next door to a 17-story apartment building. The guys are out on the balconies taking her picture, selling that picture because it's newsworthy because she's Jennifer Aniston. They sell it to these reputable publications like the National Enquirer. And they run the picture, and Jennifer sues and Jennifer loses because she does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy. And one thing to remember that I always say, and I didn't say yet today, every case turns on its own set of facts.
That's why I say, take the photo. Let the editorial department decide whether or not it's going to run or not.
Yeah, in the Jennifer Aniston case, that's because of the tower next door,
Yeah.
and so therefore, but that's very different from a drone, where you might not even be aware that there's something flying overhead.
And again,
What about Google Earth?
and there have been issues on.
I think we all have to be cognizant of the fact that our zone of privacy is diminishing with technology.
The zone of privacy may be diminishing, but I think the intrusion of privacy law is going to have to change with them, and they're not changing with them. They're not yet, anyway. Will they change in the future? My prediction is no. You're still going to have an invasion of privacy, violation, if in fact they go, if a drone can zoom in and grab what you're doing. That's just mine, because again, I apply the internet, technology, drones, to the old print media law. Because they run parallel. The laws are the same. You don't change them. The laws that we had for privacy and defamation, they're the same that we have for the new media. So we can't lose sight of that. It doesn't change at all. It's just a form that we're changing. From now on, when TVs in 1952 we went from radio to TV, it's the same kind of laws. And to show our age, and of course Greg hadn't seen this, this was the first photographer's guide to privacy, which is still in my file, if you can believe it. And it's something that some of us remember. It's dated 1988 by the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. Okay, so they were around then. So I have 1980, right to privacy. And then, of course, you have the new one, which is 2007, Photographer's Guide to Privacy, which you can get off the web also. This is also Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. So they do have these guides. And these are great for all of us to read. But I caution you, do not ever hold back on news or photo because you think you're going to get sued. Okay. If you think you are, talk to your editor. He's not going to run it. Now, what if you're already violated? We talked about trespass on an issue. Be careful in trespass. Go into someone's house, go into a market, do an investigative story, and have a hidden camera. Ask for consent. Okay. Now, if you have consent, they may say, sure, you can come into my house, and you can take photographs. But once they stop that consent, you have to be cognizant that you have to stop filming. So then you give you a limited consent on that. So as photographers, we have to be careful about that. Any other questions?
Peter, yeah, we're gonna throw it open here in a second. I just wanted to talk about one case in Vermont, and then.
Where's Vermont?
Yeah.
That's actually in a different circuit also. It's not the First Circuit, but that's okay.
Circuit by ourselves. But one of the things that somebody had mentioned to me was all the media bashing that's going on in the that we don't have much support out there and everything like that, whether it's Trump or whoever. But I want to talk about a couple of cases that popped up in Vermont. Number one, there was and it's going on right now, there's a cease and desist order has been sent to the Brattleboro Reformer about a photo that they ran at Bacon Fest. And they tried to get Kevin Bacon to come for the annual Bacon Fest that they have in Brattleboro, and they had all these stand-up pictures and Kevin Bacon and everything like that. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was Tito's Tacos. And apparently there's a restaurant, one single restaurant out in LA that has the trademark name Tito's Tacos. And so they got a letter from a lawyer saying, take down the photo and the story from your website because it's a trademark name and everything like that. And fortunately, one of the new owners of the Brattleboro Reformer Bennington Banner Group happens to be a judge, or was a judge, a retired judge, and he's told him politely it's not coming down. The little guy who operates the shack, the food stand, is going to change his name. He got a cease and desist order too. But it's crazy out there of what we're seeing. The other thing that happened in Vermont this summer, all of you probably have local swim teams, and there's a swim league in Vermont, statewide, but there's also a local one. They had the annual Champlain Valley Swim League meet in a municipal pool, and the mothers and fathers who run the league decided there would be no press photography allowed. No pictures. Nobody would be allowed inside the fenced-in area where the pool is. Well, the city manager sort of went bonkers over that. It's like it's a municipal pool and everything like that. I'll help you guys and everything like that. The league, before he got involved, the league condescended to allow a, ironic, pool photographer. One person could come in and take the pictures for all newspapers and everything like that. And he decided he didn't want to do it because he was going to have to go Friday night. There was a Saturday morning session, a Saturday afternoon session, and he had better things to do. He was going to do a drive-by shooting, get his local paper or his local team, get about 4 or 5 shots, and be out of there. So that's an issue of that we're seeing, is where people are using municipal property and banning press photography.
Did anybody take a photograph? Did anyone take a photograph?
Well, that's the other thing. You know, it was all these parents were taking pictures, video, websites. I mean, and that's one of the legal issues that we're fighting is, you know, why is it that mom and pop over here can be taking pictures, but I'm over here and I can't? And they're putting it up on a website and I'm only putting it in a weekly paper. or
So if
something
you were
like
in
that.
there and you took a photograph, would you run it?
We ended up, the Burlington Free Press, and I'm retired from, the Burlington Free Press, ironically, one of the swim coaches
Yeah.
took pictures
Okay.
and provided pictures to the Free
Fine.
Press in violation of their own self-imposed rule by the league coaches.
Yeah, it's the same as getting a news story or a photograph in a brown paper envelope. You know, can you run that? Would you be liable if it was something that you shouldn't have? The answer to that is of course yes. One other thing on photographs, and I used that, and I just thought about it this morning. Dead photographs. You know what dead photographs? We used to have a place in the newspaper called the morgue. Remember that?
Yeah.
We don't have the morgue. I don't know what they call it anymore, but it used to be the morgue. The morgue used to be where old photographs used to be stored. So actually, when I started the paper back in the 70s, I could actually go in, look under my name, and find my high school graduation photo. You can't do that now. I try to. So, think about this. Can you use the old photos in news stories? Do we use old photos in news stories? I wish you would. Even though my kids are out of college, I can still use the money for my retirement. Be careful for any more old photographs. Okay, if the person was in a welfare line, if the person maybe had hair, or maybe had more hair, and now they don't, but they're a model, and if you look at them, they have this great mane of hair, but they didn't, and you're running a photograph, be careful with morgue photographs. Okay, most suits have to do with captions, or with old photographs that have been resurrected and end up in the paper. So just be careful now.
What's the justification
Yeah.
of that? I don't understand.
I don't either.
If it was okay to run originally, why is it not okay to run again?
Yeah, your paper took the picture. The original.
Times have changed.
I'm sorry, that
It
doesn't.
doesn't.
I just say
Yeah.
more for run them, because then we'll get the call, and
No, but what's the legal reasoning?
it's all is fact-based, as Greg said. Let's see what's in that photograph. What if it was someone who was transgender? Big issue today. Big picture of a fellow who was a fellow and a football player, and now he moves to a community, and everyone knows him as Mary, but he was John.
So what?
Yeah, did they know him as John?
Don't care. To me, and maybe we disagree, but I used to say photos don't lie. That was before photoshopping, which is a whole different issue. But I say if you've got a photograph that is not altered and you're running it, I don't ever see a problem with that. I can't think of I don't care if the person is a woman and used to be a man. There's the story.
I mean, isn't the issue essentially whether you're still using the photo in a fair and accurate light? Like, let's say you took a photograph of, a person shopping at a grocery store to illustrate a story about people shopping for the Super Bowl, and then you run that same photograph with an article about obese people, right? So it was fine in the first context, but if you're using it in the second context, then the people in the photograph might have a cause of action against you.
False light invasion
Right.
of privacy. You're right.
There's a case of a child that was normal. It was a normal child taken in a normal setting, and 5 years later, the newspaper ran a story on children with disabilities, and they took that stock photo, and
False
and
light
and
invasion of
used it.
privacy, that's right.
Now, in that particular case, the newspaper won, but they still got sued, which means Greg and I still get paid. So, but again, be careful for those. You take a stock photograph, you think it's okay, you ran before, you run in a news story, and it just doesn't pair up.
Yeah,
I just wanna- I just got a couple-
Context.
Yes, it's context.
So just a couple last points, and then we'll throw it open. So anyway, on the swim team thing, the Sports Writers Sportscasters Association had worked with a lot of the high schools, and you should consider something like that. In their authorization form for a kid to play a sport, that, you know, there's a line in some of these high schools have put in there that, you know, we acknowledge, the parents sign off on this, we acknowledge that our kid is playing a public sport on a public field at a public high school, you know, before public crowds, and therefore your child's picture may be taken and we have no control over it as a school and everything like that. So you ought to check with some of your schools to make sure. I always love when we hear, and we asked a bunch of the newspapers, they always say, we've got a court order that does not allow any photographs of our children. You know, and that's why you can't. And that was part of the thing about the swim team, because we have court orders that say you can't take pictures of swim teams, allegedly. And I said, ask them for a copy of that. I'd really love to see, and force them. Say, well, can you show us the court order? Well, they tell us they have it. Well, not good, thanks. But, you know, Mom may say that, but did a judge really say there will never, ever, ever, ever be a picture taken of this child? I doubt it. So don't be afraid to ask. Last thing on police videos, and this is happening today, there was a fatal shooting by police a couple of weeks ago, and it sounds like the prosecutor, well, he did say not charging the cop, who the Free Press reported that he'd been fired from 2 police departments, and he was now with his 3rd, and it does seem justified. You know, the guy was a suspect in 3 bank robberies. He had his hand behind his back. He was advancing toward the cop. Cop told him to stop. He didn't, and eventually shot the guy. But the police did not give out the video originally, despite requests from various groups and everything like that. And the question becomes, you know, why not? And please ask, whenever you have a police video, shooting, body cam, ask for those right away. Vermont authorities keep saying, well, we have to do an investigation. And I keep saying, 49 other states, they give them out. Are the police that backwards in Vermont? Have they not kept up with the latest trends in investigative techniques, that they can't do an investigation? It seems like the 49 other states can do police investigations with a video out, whether it's Charlotte, wherever it was. So, and then the other question becomes, how do you know that the video isn't going to be tampered with by the police? Good question. They wait 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then they say, this is the video. We don't know. So I want to throw it open because we have run over Bill.
Yeah, so we're operating it, you know, obviously in an era of user-generated content. Of something happens, we immediately, you know, try and get video or a photograph that's from somebody, right? At my news organization, we are under enormous pressure to run down the authorship of that image before we can use it. And then I noticed that there's a million other news outlets who seem to have no particular, you know, order to do that. And it always feels like we're at a huge competitive disadvantage, but we're being told that we absolutely must establish who took the photo, or we can be sued. And it's not, it gets really complicated because, like, maybe there's a train crash, and and then the family provides you a photo, it's their wedding picture, but then, you know, the family didn't take it, it was a wedding photographer, you know, you gotta run this down.
And it may have a copyright
So
on it from the...
like, what is the, are we being, when we're being told we can't use it, absolutely can't use it unless the actual person who took it gives us permission, is that legit?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good advice.
All right. Damn it.
Anybody else with a question?
So I have one for the attorneys, if I may.
Oh, I'm Adam Silverman from the Burlington Free Press in Vermont. We're in addition to dealing with the police shooting issue and the videotape, there's another case that we just start dealing with today as I'm sitting here. There was an investigation in Burlington of a drive-by shooting that led to the city police making an arrest. The suspect then was charged federally. City police are now withholding the guy's booking photograph, his mugshot, which is very unusual in Vermont. All Vermont police departments release mugshots. The feds, of course, never do. We've made a public records request that was just denied about 10 minutes ago. What suggestions do you have for what we can do, and have you run into a situation like this before?
And they're all relying on the federal marshals, which out in Detroit, they had a positive ruling, and then recently I think it got reversed or something like that.
No, that's Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. Mugshots can be withheld.
Why
That's federal.
can they be?
That's federal law.
Do you know why they can be?
Invasion of privacy of
No.
the suspect.
They interfere.
No, person hasn't been charged yet.
Well, we actually got a denial that it would improperly invade the privacy of
It's
the
the same.
accused.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing. That's right.
They haven't been charged. It's never been an issue before.
He's been charged, this guy, in this
He's
case.
been charged in federal court, he's been,
Jail.
he's had a first appearance on an information.
Charged.
The answer I get in
Get it.
Massachusetts is that the jury pool could be tainted in that way, right? So you release the photo and now the jury is aware of this person, so if they go to trial, now you've interfered with the trial.
I always find that to be
That's not
preposterous.
not
I
nice.
always say to the authorities here in Vermont, I go, okay, let me think. We've had 200 plus years of trials in 14 counties, and there is yet to be one case overturned for pretrial publicity. And you're speculating there might be a jury unavailable. And you have no faith in the jury system, no faith in the judge to ensure a fair trial. Is that what you're really saying? And they sort of, and then they still don't give it out.
I don't have your charm, Mike. I don't have that. That's good.
A mugshot of a person charged, I think, is fair game.
Absolutely.
And especially, this is from a department, a local
No,
department that always releases.
And why is it fair game? Okay, because the mugshot may be a different person. Okay? It's absolutely fair game. You should go back and win that. And on the jury issue, you're already at that stage. That won't fly en masse. We need to bring that up. We need to do something. That should be. On the consent that Mike said, I wouldn't go asking school departments if they have consent. I wouldn't go asking anyone if we have the right to take a photograph. I think we should just take the damn thing. Now, if they come back and tell us, well, we do have consent forms, oh, good, great, good. Okay, let me think. The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law affecting the press. I don't care if they have a consent. I don't care if they don't have a consent. We can take the photograph.
If you're at a place you have a right to be,
Yeah.
and if the public has access to these events, then you have a right to take pictures.
What about a hospital? How about a hospital arraignment? You guys get into hospital arraignments? Good. Fine, because they try to sneak that through. I've been several times called to a hospital, and once they see that the lawyer's there, suddenly the doors open up. But don't get shut out of a hospital arraignment. They may ask you not to have a picture of the injuries and some of the nurses, but you are allowed into a hospital.
We got about 2 minutes, I think. Anybody have any last questions, comments, thoughts? Again, thank you very much for coming. NEFAC is pleased to always present a program every fall. If you're not on the NEFAC mailing list and or website or a friend of NEFAC or following it on Twitter, please get on New England First Amendment Coalition. It has a lot of good, valuable information for you. Thanks very much for coming.